name is Emma Watson, playing the part of Hermione Granger.
Walking onto the set of The Philosopher's Stone was a dream come true for Daniel, Emma and Rupert. Hogwarts was basically their playground. The film itself might deal with some serious issues, like a two-faced professor looking for the demise of one of his students, but for the most part, the behind the scenes was full of laughs, pranks, and adorable on-set crushes. Though there was one professor the actors were petrified of off-camera. Ready to find out who?
My name is Gareth Holmes, I work for the RSPCA.
If Hogwarts was their playground, the rest of the children in the cast were the Golden Trio's classmates, which, as you can imagine, led to a lot of on-set chaos. It was near impossible to get them all focused at the same time. Director Chris Columbus says they were constantly laughing and fooling around in between takes, and sometimes even during takes. Look how adorable they all were. It might have taken some extra effort from the adults on set, but on the bright side, it led to impeccable on-screen chemistry. The audition process for Daniel, Emma and Rupert couldn't be any more different. For Daniel, it was just another day at the theatre with his parents when producer David Heyman, who had already had his eye on Daniel for the role, convinced him to just come in for an audition.
You would sign up for the entire series and it was all to be filmed in America.
But Daniel's parents weren't really up for relocating their 11-year-old son. Luckily, they ended up filming in the UK and it all worked out. Emma attended a drama class for her audition.
Basically, my school got an invitation.
After she was hand-selected from her classmates, she went on to audition 8 more times before she secured her spot. Rupert's audition is probably the most wild story we've heard so far. He heard about the open call auditions and sent in a video of himself, dressed as his drama teacher while performing a rap.
Then I made my own script thing up and sent it off.
It may have landed him an in-person audition, but it didn't save him from embarrassment. The Golden Trio had almost absolutely no experience in film, which led to a lot of nervous actors on the first day of filming.
I was terrified.
Not only were they acting, but they were learning the ins and outs of memorising lines and hitting their marks. Not to mention all the professional lingo. They made so many mistakes that director Chris said he had to film with multiple cameras. Each actor always had a camera on them. This was so they could catch as much footage as possible and piece it all together. That's why the first film is a little choppy. They couldn't get through a full scene without someone making a mistake.
Rupert, don't smile, and Emma, don't put your head out forward.
Chris deserves all the awards for how much effort he put into the film. He wasn't shy about how much he enjoyed working with actors, but he went the extra level for the amateur actors on set. A lot of the time he would be behind the cameras acting the scene out alongside Daniel, Emma and Rupert so they could take reference from him. Look at him go.
I always, laughed and said we should put a camera on Chris.
We don't have access to all the bloopers from the set, but we're willing to bet a lot of them would include Emma. While filming, she had a habit of mouthing everyone else's lines and ruining entire takes. We're sure they appreciated how focused and eager she was, but Emma says the whole process traumatised her.
I really wanted to do my job well, and I kind of overdid it.
She, of course, eventually worked through it. What would a movie set be without some pranks? For this franchise, at least in the early days, Daniel was the prankster mastermind.
I'm an angel. I'm an angel.
Sure you were, Dan. He was so good he managed to get a hold of Robbie Coltrane, also known as Hagrid's, phone and reprogram it from English to Turkish. Genius. Besides that, he was constantly wandering set looking for ways to prank people, performing magic tricks, and overall being cheeky. Normally, calling cut on set means everyone breaks character, but a lot of the time Alan Rickman, who played Snape, would remain in character between takes, which also meant Dan and Rupert were terrified of him both on and off camera.
I was constantly having to remind myself that it's only a film, it's only a film.
One time, Rupert drew a funny caricature of Alan Rickman while filming. Rupert was absolutely terrified when he realised Alan had noticed the drawing from over his shoulder. Luckily, this was one time Alan decided to break character.
I made him sign it and I have it in my possession.
Alan took it home and said it was something that was very dear to him. Our hearts. It wouldn't be a set full of preteens and teens without any crushes developing. We didn't know it at the time, but Emma Watson revealed years later that she had a major crush on Tom Felton from the ages of 10 to 12.
We love a bad guy, and he was a few years older, and he had a skateboard. And that just did it, really.
But Tom would refer to her as a little sister, and she had her heart torn in two. A lot of people wondered why they wrote out Hermione's huge buck teeth in the script. Well, it was because Emma Watson couldn't speak properly with them.
Teeth test. Teeth test.
She did multiple camera tests with them, and even filmed one scene with them that made it to the final cut. But ultimately, it just didn't work out. We all know the irony of people telling Harry,
You have your mother's eyes.
when Daniel indeed did not. Instead of the green eyes Harry has in the novel, Daniel had blue eyes, and it wasn't for lack of effort. Daniel did try and wear contacts, but had a painful allergic reaction that forced them to film without them. You know the scene at the end of The Philosopher's Stone where Harry is saying goodbye to Hagrid? His eyes were only puffy because he'd been wearing them. Does that count as method acting? The floating candles in the Great Hall are iconic, and they knew they had to get them perfect. At first, they were using real candles hung with fishing line, but those candles started melting and falling on the actors below. Yikes. That meant they only had 1 or 2 takes to get the grand entrance perfect. So, the reaction you see from the first years here is the actual reaction from the kids. It was the first time they had seen that set.
No acting required.
Speaking of the Great Hall, director Chris says that those were the most difficult scenes to film. That's because they had to control over 300 children in one space. Even the child actors themselves don't know how he managed it.
I don't know how he does it.
He used various techniques to get everything perfect, but then reblocking for another take would take forever.
Let the feast begin.
The Great Hall just seems to be the place where everything went awry. You know that delicious looking food that always lines the tables in the films? Well, for the first film, that food was very real and needed to last them through 3 days of filming. Under the heat of the set lights, there was no way that food was staying fresh, which meant the hall didn't smell very pleasant. The Philosopher's Stone is like 99% focused on just children, which meant in order to film the movie at the time, they had to petition for UK labour law adjustments. They managed to get the kids on set for 9 hours a day, but only about 4 to 5 of those hours were filming. The rest were dedicated to school and breaks.
It's tough, but we had brilliant kids and they did really well.
Owls play a huge role in all of the films, and to take the movie realism to a whole new level, Chris managed to use real, live trained owls. It wasn't easy, but they managed to do it.
Mail's here.
The magical scene where the owls swoop in to deliver the student's post was shot by filming owls individually and then editing them all together later on.
Owls are beautiful creatures, but they are difficult to train.
We've never wanted a time turner more. We'd give anything to just be a fly on the wall and get to experience all of this firsthand. Looking back on the film that started it all, it's amazing to see how far the actors have come since their beginnings. What behind-the-scenes moments did you love hearing about most?